you're a petroleum operator, you know the oil and gas industry is changing fast. You've got to adapt to the future by creating greater efficiency in operations, reducing risk, and designing for a more sustainable future. You also know everything in energy happens somewhere. And since getting location right is so important, turning to Esri gives you the power you need to stay ahead. You get the most advanced capabilities in the industry from the world leader in location technology. With our integrated GIS platform and huge partner network, you have access to groundbreaking solutions and a complete GIS enterprise system. Network management tools with True 3D let you visualize your system the way it looks in the real world and bring your design to life to model and manage emerging renewables. Spatial tools give you a better understanding of your network and assets. Mobile field apps streamline data collection, routing, and navigation. When natural disasters strike, you get real-time monitoring of operations to reduce risks, speed up recovery, and get back to business faster. And you can create a true digital twin of your network to show connections that match the real world. Plus, an open architecture lets you share maps and apps on any device, any system, anywhere, anytime. And with cutting-edge spatial analytics, you can leverage IoT, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to understand the past better and forecast the future more accurately. With Esri location technology, you'll have everything you need to supercharge operational efficiency and diversify to meet growing demands of the future.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on which part of the globe you're joining us from. And welcome to the final session of the Petroleum Users Group Conference. My name is Tiffany Glenn, and I'm part of the petroleum team here at Esri. I'm joined by my colleague, Sam Rosario, and we're excited to welcome to you to this session focused on corporate social responsibility, also referred as CSR, and health, safety, and environment, also referred to as HSE. Good afternoon, Sam.
Hey.
Good
afternoon, Tiffany. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
What an exciting event it's been. How much valuable information has been shared among the community, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. It's been great to see the presentations from all the users and how they're applying their amazing skills to help their organizations thrive. Here at Esri, we develop the tools with great input from our customers, but we're always blown away when we hear and see the way they are being applied. It's truly a testament, not only to the skills of our users, but the great camaraderie and willingness to share with this great GIS family that extends throughout the whole globe. I'm excited because today we're going to hear some more from your peers in the industry and how they have been able to leverage and maximize the Esri tools to reduce risk in their operations while elevating CSR. Tiffany, before we start, I think what we would like to do is we would like to encourage you, all those wherever you're joining us from, to post your questions as they occur during the presentation in the comment box. One thing that will be really helpful for us is if you can reference the section or the presenter for your question, then we'll do our best to really answer them at the end of the presentation. Corporate social responsibility and HSE are taking on higher priority as companies strive towards a more sustainable future. This session and all the presenters that you see here on the agenda will cover how setting ambitious net zero carbon goals, monitoring methane emissions, and managing operational needs in areas to meet all the changes in the regulatory mandates. We're also going to reference at the second part of the session, HSE case studies, workflows in prevention, planning, and incident response. As we look at throughout the enterprise, spatial technologies are being employed throughout the whole enterprise. And over the last few days, we have seen through multiple examples how our users are leveraging GIS to support their companies and organizations. Supporting HSE procedures, give our users the ability to reveal vulnerabilities, model real-time status to minimize risk, and enable preparedness and mitigation measures should an emergency arise. A part of HSE that has taken priority over the last few years is corporate social responsibility. And these tools have really proven to be very effective in addressing those needs as well. During the first half of this session, we will focus on corporate social responsibility, and you will hear from your peers who, like many of you, are working to create positive change in the industry. CSR has definitely become a prominent topic lately, and there is increased interest in this area. We see it in the press, we hear about it in the news, and a Bloomberg report shows a massive increase in the mentioning of sustainability in the quarterly oil and gas companies conference calls. Now, Tiffany, I know a lot of your customers are taking an active approach to CSR. Can you tell us what you're seeing in the industry as a whole in relation to this?
Yeah, absolutely. The practice goes by many names: corporate social responsibility, environment, social and corporate governance, stakeholder capitalism, sustainable prosperity. All advance a philosophy that marries the long-term health of a company with the people and places it serves. The driving forces are both economic and cultural and originate inside and outside of a company. The industry is working on some of the world's toughest challenges, and everything you do is an opportunity to practice social responsibility, whether that involves better serving communities, reducing greenhouse gases, supporting fair trade, upskilling workers. Location data plays a key in determining where and how a company can do the most good. And that's really why innovative, brand conscious, forward-thinking, tech-savvy companies are relying on smart maps and dashboards generated by GIS to help them visualize, monitor, and report on CSR-related efforts. For example, a supply chain executive or maybe a sustainability manager can use GIS to follow their company's carbon footprint over time. Through the combination of analysis and visualization, decision makers can determine where activities are contributing most to the rise of greenhouse gases and where their mitigation efforts are gaining ground. A company can look at its greenhouse gas emissions and find that its carbon footprint is tied to everything in its production activities like completions and flaring, maybe venting of gas from storage tanks, or just to general leaks from the wellhead meters or valves. And this revelation has inspired some to take action and underscores the importance of understanding risks companies, consumers, and communities are facing.
So that is interesting. There is no doubt that because carbon emissions are so closely tied to things like transportation, the movement of products, and resources along supply chains, a strong data system is essential to accurate tracking. At the root of GIS, we understand that we live in an interconnected world. Geospatial technology integrates these approaches, as well as multiple data types, and allow us to look at a problem holistically. You know, it is not just about seeing a point on a map, but explicitly understanding the relationships among places, people, policies, and practices. Leading-edge thinkers are seeking location intelligence to anticipate how to make the best long-term capital investments for the good of the company, but also for the communities they represent. This means interconnecting people and organizations. Now, our GIS community has a rich heritage in this aspect. The life of work at Esri has focused on building decision support systems that are rooted in geography to combine disparate data and help people see the whole of a problem. We do believe that a geographic approach through collecting data can help us to predict potential impact in the areas we operate and allow us to put plans in place that can protect and improve the natural world, our built environment, and the lives of people. Our commitment to sustainability and reducing our carbon footprint is not a new thing. It started 50 years ago as we have partnered and supported many agencies to address and protect our ever-changing world. One of the tools recently added to the Esri toolset that can help us with this process are geocards. These cards focus specifically on a topic and are powered by the Living Atlas content. What this means is that the content is curated, authoritative, and updated constantly. The Indicators of the Planet is a dashboard of dashboards comprised of geocards where anyone can go, see a series of global indicators such as air quality, cyclones, carbon dioxide, and many others. The cards are live feeds with their own cadence showing current status and conditions. Geocards are experience builder templates that you can customize and use around your own topics in a shareable and embeddable way. It is a tool that brings together organizations and stakeholders to achieve projected metrics, operational targets, safety metrics, or particular KPIs.
What a great tool, Sam. In fact, our user community has the data, technology, and the skills to help drive change. You can help your organization elevate CSR by leveraging geospatial tools for mapping, planning, and analytics. Sustainable development requires deep transformation of our energy and land use systems, and both of those are inherently geospatial challenges. Now let's hear about the great work that Vanda Bujas from Oxy is doing to address these changes. Vanda leads Occidental Petroleum's GIS operations team. She promotes collaboration among disciplines in the oil and gas sector through custom GIS projects and brings geospatial awareness to the organization. For 10 years, she's worked with midstream and upstream companies to influence user-focused GIS solutions and applications. She holds a master's degree in GIS and is currently enrolled in Penn State GeoINT program. She considers herself a lucky one who's found a profession she really loves. Today, Vanda will share her journey at Oxy, how they have become, and how GIS has become a fundamental component in Oxy's future direction. Go ahead, Vanda.
Thank you, Tiffany. What if I were to tell you that Oxy, the largest independent oil producer in the United States, will be carbon neutral in both primary and secondary carbon emission? This is the vision of Low Carbon Ventures, and they are using GIS to achieve this incredible goal. Combining two different worlds, such as GIS and Low Carbon Ventures, also known as LCV, was one of the most fascinating and one-of-a-kind union at Oxy's history. Low Carbon Venture was formed in 2018 to answer a call for a carbon neutral operation in the oil and gas industry. One of the main goals was to implement a carbon neutral energy cycle, which mimics the natural carbon cycles by pulling CO2 directly from the atmosphere to be sequestered at an industrial scale. This allows us to permanently store captured CO2 in geologic formations in an amount equal to that which is emitted through production, processing, and combustion of oil and fuels. LCV's Vice President for Services was the key connection in this fusion. He is the very same person who hired me many years ago to do GIS for Oxy's operation. When he left my unit and moved to LCV, he brought GIS with him, opening the door for us to be part of something groundbreaking and to be pioneer using GIS in this new field. We were thrilled. At Oxy, GIS is one of our fundamental tools that we utilize in many shapes and forms. We strive to use and leverage this cutting-edge technology and bringing awareness of the capabilities this tool is harboring by teaching, educating, and demonstrating its capabilities. We did exactly this. We were exploring how geospatial information can help expand and reach their capabilities in this new era, and by doing so, we help them to solve spatial problems, like point out cluster, find the shortest path, or discover spatial correlations. It was a difficult task to unpack all the new terms and concepts, but we were armed with the best people in this field. So today, I'm going to break down our geospatial adventure with Low Carbon Ventures into three main items. At the highest level, we have a concept of how LCV wish to advancing the vision, the lower carbon world. They set the course to focus on reducing the total carbon impact by decreasing operation emission, increasing energy efficiency, and capturing more carbon that we produce. This idea has a multi-level and matrix-like characteristics. To be able to explore more and more information under, around, and above us, the only engine that can make this possible is GIS. The geospatial capabilities of GIS, where we can explore more than what we see or understand at glance. The depth of the tool goes far beyond our imagination and as deep as we need to understand our surroundings. One thing that we all needed to succeed in this new challenge was data. Finding data, manipulating data, sharing data. We had a variety of use cases for some of the concepts LCV was looking into when it came to finding answers to complex questions. We are part of their discovery, planning, and executing decision, and some of these concepts you may already heard about, like using spatial statistics to calculate which plant is the closest to one of our CO2 pipeline, or where in the US we are emitting the most CO2 by utilizing public data sources. In our GIS, we utilize many geoprocessing tools to solve problems and aid the work of the low carbon team. These tools came from the three broad categories such as classification, clustering, and prediction. Within the classification category, we were using maximum likelihood classification to investigate the depth and stratification of the reservoir for sequestration. Another example from clustering, we use the hotspot analysis to locate places that are large CO2 emitters to see how close they are to our infrastructure. From prediction, we use geographically weighted regression to see if indirect emission is increased with proximity to what kind of factories or plants. Many other tools helped us to process large quantity of input point data into meaningful clusters or locations. One of the most fascinating projects we worked on was the so-called CO2 superhighway. There are a small representation of hundreds of data points for factories, plants, mills that has some volume of CO2 emission. So how did we make sense of all this data? And how did we choose the optimal route to our CO2 superhighway to be able to reach as many facilities as possible, or only reach the one that has a certain volume of emission? First, we use the clustering tool to do a hotspot analysis. We try to separate the dataset to meaningful clusters and remove all the noises so we could identify locations where CO2 emission was worth investigating further. We group them by low-cost emitters, qualify for 45Q, which is a tax credit, non-threatened emitters, and large emitters. At the same time, we were looking for already existing pipeline infrastructure just to map out our possibilities. We are also produce a pipeline system with diameter and other specification in case if we need to build one. We utilize ArcGIS Pro site suitability tool to make sure we design the pipeline in the most suitable way. Then, we use the geographically weighted regression tool to recognize what kind of plants are these emitters and what is their emission characteristics. We try to use as many data as possible from different sources and pair them up, analyze them against each other to gain new insight. The result was breathtaking. We were able to shortlist the emitters in a way that the project would reach the highest possible collection, and not only found this location, but we were able to put them on the map with their attributes. So when decision makers opened the Esri Poro operation dashboard, they were able to see the whole concept from start to finish: the hubs, the specific emitters, the pipelines, and on the spot, they were able to do further manipulation by giving them the smart widgets. As Oxy ACVs moves towards its vision of net zero carbon emission, they will continue to utilize GIS solution because of the incredible value it gives them. We use many geospatial tools to make them the industry leader and gain a competitive advantage by leveraging GIS as their fundamental way of doing business. Using classification, clustering, and predictions are just a few tools that we used in this unique project. When I talk about my profession, I always walk away with a new project or a new client. We broke the traditional mold of GIS here at Oxy, and we are moving into this new undiscovered territory with full of curiosity to see what comes next. It's a fascinating world. And if someone asks a question, consider GIS. We can put everybody and everything on the map. Thank you. Sam, Tiffany, back to you.
Thanks, Fonda. It's awesome to see how GIS is being used at Oxy to help expand and reach capabilities in carbon neutral operations and also in carbon sequestering at an industrial scale. With so many complex challenges, it's impressive to see how your team is able to make sense of massive volumes and varieties of data to better understand and target your CO2 superhighway. We can also see how you expanded the potential of what could be done using GIS tools by educating your stakeholders on the capabilities and the possibilities. I know there's going to be a lot of questions, and I'm certainly looking forward to hear more about how you were able to build a relationship with the executive team to bring value to this new venture and demonstrate how GIS is fundamental to support these efforts. Another challenge that's gaining much attention currently is methane emissions. Our next presenter is my colleague, Matt Ballard, who is a solutions engineer on the natural resources team. He will show how you can leverage both imagery as well as sensors in the field to identify and respond to methane emissions. Over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Sam and Tiffany. Emissions are top of mind for many oil and gas operators, as we've been discussing today, and ArcGIS can play a key role in helping to mitigate emissions. There are dozens of monitoring technologies that are being used today across the industry, and location ties all of them together as everything happens somewhere. ArcGIS can integrate these data sources from multimodal monitoring activities. But it's more important than just monitoring. It's also about responding to minimize emissions and compliance risk. As well, you'll see that maps can play a key role in communicating with stakeholders and anybody who needs to see this data to make decisions. ArcGIS provides 5 key capabilities for emissions monitoring. The first 3 are methods of monitoring: field mobility for inspections, remote sensing of all types, and IoT for connected devices. Each represents a data source and input into ArcGIS. Then there's the system of record and the system of engagement. This is where your data is centrally managed and accessed through applications like dashboards, where you can track key indicators and overlay this monitoring data onto your assets. And then finally, stakeholder communication. Everybody can understand a map, and you can use maps that we'll build as tools for transparent communication. For remote sensing, data is being captured from satellites and aircraft to drones and ground-based devices. To manage these, you need tools that support these diverse arrays of remote sensing platforms and formats. It also manages all scales, right, from global data sets to specific sites where you might use drones. And on the topic of drones, increasingly, we're seeing these be used to inspect difficult to reach areas with high resolution and more diverse payloads, such as thermal cameras for site inspections, or drones being used to generate 3D models for context. When there's gaps in remote sensing, you can fill in with ground-based inspections. Form-based inspections for facilities are used to build up a record of site visits, capturing pictures, notes, and of course, a location. And if issue is detected, then a report or an alert could be generated and sent to the appropriate individuals. The visual inspections really only represent one point in time, and they require personnel, time, and resources, and they're not feasible for comprehensively monitoring entire operations. So in addition to remote sensing, what can help is IoT devices and sensors. By connecting your maps to all these IoT devices, you can visualize alerts geospatially. This could represent locations where there's thief hatch sensors, stationary cameras, gas detection equipment. All these different sorts of IoT devices can be connected and visualized. Generally, some combination of inspections, remote sensing, and IoT devices together will be used to monitor most operations. A central system of record can manage all of these data sources and enable you to visualize them together with your core asset data, such as acreage, facilities, wells, and more. ArcGIS can help to break down these data silos between independent sources of monitoring data and bring them all together under one system of record. And finally, maps, after you've built the system of record, integrated these data sources, they're a common language that everybody can understand. You can leverage these data sets and maps that you build and reports for transparent communication with all stakeholders. With that, let's go look at what this looks like in practice. Here, we're looking at a fairly typical operations map. I can see acreage, operating areas, field offices, wells, and much more. This data all provides context for the other emissions data that we'll work with. First, we'll look at remote sensing, where I'm using several data sets from GHGSat, an Esri business partner. GHGSat provides global emissions monitoring from a constellation of satellites that helps to identify large leaks fast. On the map, red and orange indicates higher methane concentrations. This is a weekly average data set with updates every single week. On a specific and more targeted basis, GHGSat can also task satellites to achieve higher resolution data. They can provide alerts or analytics to highlight and specifically show you where potential plumes might be. Leveraging this global data set, though, you can manage your operations by exception when it comes to inspecting assets that might be leaking greenhouse gases. This data set does not tell us where leaks are, but they do enable you to intelligently plan where you should inspect. Facilities in areas of higher concentrations can be on the top of your list for where next to go with an inspection camera. I've opened up ArcGIS Pro, where I've gone ahead and performed this analysis. Each dot represents a facility that some type of equipment could be leaking from. We can extract the methane levels at each of these sites from the GHGSat data and identify the top 100 facilities that we should be inspecting within a given week, highlighted there on the map in blue. Then we can generate optimum driving directions based on these locations to say where we should visit in the most optimal order, maximizing the number and the quality of inspections. Now, this brings us to the next method of monitoring, which is around field inspections. Now that we have this optimum order of stops, we need to go into the field to actually perform the inspection. I've opened up my tablet, and in the field, what I can see are my regular emissions inspections that were generated just a moment ago in ArcGIS Pro. But I can also see a critical priority assignment that's been given to me to go out and inspect an alert that we received from GHGSat. From here, I can navigate directly to the facility and perform an inspection. I can provide information on what I'm inspecting, such as what equipment I'm inspecting, what equipment I'm using to perform the inspection, and whether or not I observed any gas leaks. I'll also answer the question whether there was a leak, whether I repaired the leak. If the answer is no, a follow-up repair will be scheduled, and I can provide any pictures at the bottom for reference. Back in our dashboard, we can now see a list of inspections that we can interact with, and KPIs telling us how many inspections have been completed, how many where gas was detected, and how many of those that were fixed, and giving us an idea of what work needs to be done and how much work has been completed. As well, on our map, I can see the location of all of these different inspections, shown as green dots for good ones and red exclamations for issues that were detected. One of the most cost-effective ways of monitoring them is with IoT devices. Devices could be detecting gases or detecting something known to cause emissions, such as in this facility, an open thief hatch sensor, or down here, the camera which detected gas. Vehicle-mounted sensors are another source of data that can be visualized. Here, each of these dots corresponding to a methane concentration picked up from the vehicle, where this color represents lower concentrations, orange, higher, and red, the highest concentrations. ArcGIS can adjust all these different types of real-time data streams for visualization on this map, or for geospatial analytics, potentially finding clusters, identifying potential culprits of these issues, and more. By combining all of these different sources of real-time data, imagery data, field mobility, you can comprehensively monitor emissions and respond effectively. From preventative maintenance and inspections to finding the largest leaks and responding to them, you can know when and where you've conducted work, enabling you to pinpoint leak durations, for example, for reporting. Aside from viewing this data in ArcGIS dashboards, you can also bring this into reporting applications like Power BI. Here, we're looking at a slightly different example of data where here we're seeing flaring intensity from the satellite observations. The heat map indicates where flaring intensity is highest, and I can filter this data down to look at specific months of different years to find where intensity has changed over time. But I have access to all of those other geospatial data layers that we had within our dashboard, such as our global methane concentrations from GHGSat, our specific observations from things like vehicles, satellites, sensors, and much more. As emissions monitoring becomes more and more necessary and commonplace, you can be prepared to use that data to actually respond and to minimize emissions and costs. ArcGIS can then integrate IoT data, GIS data, remote sensing, field inspections, all into one common operating picture. So you can generate information products for operations teams, executives, analysts, and more. With that, thanks, and back to you, Sam and Tiffany.
Thank you, Matt. And a special thanks to GHGSat for providing a sample data set and incredible imagery. We just saw how GIS is bringing together data from remote sensing, drones, and IoT, which supports visualization, analysis, and problem solving for methane emissions. Companies are taking a proactive approach in monitoring methane emissions, and it's great to see through your presentation that these tools are ready and available to start taking action today. As the world continues to change, so does the regulatory landscape as countries and states try to find a balance to protect the environment, yet maintain a healthy economy. Recently, there was a big change in Colorado, which quadrupled the setback requirements with the intent of protecting the safety and welfare of the general public from things like spills, odors, noise, dust, and lighting. Our next presenter is Andy Bonhoff. Andy has 10 years of oil and gas experience and is the founder of Platte River Analytics, a GIS consulting and service company. Let's join Andy to discuss how he's helping companies navigate these regulatory changes. Andy?
Thank you, Sam and Tiffany. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the presentation today titled Navigating Colorado's Regulatory Environment. The theme of this presentation is how a single GIS analyst can utilize the suite of Esri tools to assist multiple teams within their company in navigating the regulatory environment of Colorado. So to recap, early in 2021, the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission passed a series of oil and gas specific laws that quadrupled drilling and completion setbacks from homes and businesses. The previous setback was 500 feet, and that has now increased to 2,000 feet. Commissioner Robbins of the COGCC says the setbacks provide substantially equivalent protections for public health, safety, and welfare. The setbacks have obviously affected dozens of operators in Northeast Colorado. In order to address the issue from a GIS standpoint, I utilized 4 primary pieces of data. Possibly the most important piece of data in this analysis are the building footprints. These can be acquired via download from Microsoft, through machine learning, or purchasing them from a vendor. Landowner parcels are an important piece of data if you're working with building footprints that do not have a building type attribute. Parcels can typically be downloaded from county GIS sites. However, not every county allows for a free download. In these cases, you may look to a company like Whitestar to purchase the county parcel data. The next piece of data I'm going to briefly touch upon are rig sound signatures. I like to use generic rig sound signatures to get a better idea of how far sound will travel from drilling or completion sites, and to ensure the pad will stay in compliance to city and county noise regulations. While at Anadarko, we use sound signatures to model pad construction and sound walls. The team over at Urban Solution Group kindly allowed me to use one of their generic sound signatures for this presentation. Lastly, I'm going to use pad locations from a drill schedule. These future pads will use a stoplight symbology to show their status as it relates to setbacks. I wanted to show you quickly how Model Builder plays an important piece in this analysis. This model converts the footprints from a GeoJSON to a geodatabase layer and then clips it to an area within Weld County, spatially joins the footprints to the parcels to obtain a building type, creates a 2,000-foot buffer surrounding the buildings, and then publishes all the data to ArcGIS Online. An important component to keep in mind is Model Builder can edit and publish ArcGIS Online data. By adding the input layer for my content, I can simultaneously update my Pro project and web maps. After hitting browse and then searching the data in my content, I can select the data that needs updated through Model Builder. I also wanted to mention that models can now be scheduled to run at specific times, similar to what you would do with Python script in Windows Task Scheduler. A model like this that may have irregular updates could be scheduled to run weekly or maybe bi-weekly. The models that may require more time or processing power are better off to be scheduled through the night when most others are logged off. For this particular model, I want the recurrence to be weekly on Fridays, and begin running on Friday morning at 4 a.m. Now that the data has been published to an ArcGIS Online app via Model Builder, let's take a look at the functionality and components of the application. Here in Web App Builder, I have clipped the Weld County data to a small area north of Greeley, Colorado. You can see the smaller blue polygons are the building footprints, and the light blue buffers are 2,000-foot setbacks we have been discussing. With the buffer analysis that was completed in ArcGIS Pro, you can very quickly see the open areas outside the 2,000-foot buffer that would be open to a pad location. I have also modeled a 500-foot buffer to show the previous setbacks before the new rules took place. 6 months ago, 100% of the pads you see on the map were completely viable with the 500-foot setbacks. Now, with the 2,000-foot setbacks, only 50% of these pads are viable. Utilizing Web App Builder and ArcGIS Online, we will address this issue. You can see the stoplight symbolized pads that are on this map. The red pads are fully stranded and most likely will not be drillable. The yellow pads are right on the edge of the setbacks, and if they can be moved, could still be viable. The green pads are fully viable and should be at the top of the drill schedule. This app utilizes the search bar to search on our pad locations. I set up the search bar in Web App Builder to search on this feature layer by pad name. I'm going to search for a pad called the Stable Land Pad. The search tool will allow users to easily share data within an organization and also lets any member in the organization search the attributes within the data. So for example, a stakeholder rep can easily find the stable land pad by searching for it. And conversely, the geologist that created the pad location can search stakeholder data like grievances or parcel owners. A layer that was important to us at Anadarko, and for most exploration companies on the Front Range, are rig sound signatures. Generic rig sound signatures can give members of a team a better idea of what type of mitigation should be present and what stakeholders may need further analysis. When I published my data from ArcGIS Pro, I configured the pad locations layer and rig signature data to enable editing. Enabling editing on published data allows a creator to edit or move the data. A user can also edit fields such as dates and notes, as well as add items like site photos or AFE documents. Having the sound signatures of rigs is another tool that demonstrates positive health, safety, and environmental standards. Staying within compliance on sound is a big part of the new COGCC rulemaking and is something that every company should be addressing. Now that I have switched base maps over to the hybrid imagery layer, you can get a better visual of stable land pad and its surrounding environment. While the pad is outside the 2,000-foot setbacks, the pad location is pretty close to farm buildings. We can also see there's almost 2,000 feet of open land to the west that we could potentially move the pad to. I said earlier that the pad data has editing enabled. I'm going to show why that is important in this setting. After I activate the editor widget, I can then edit both the pad locations layer and the rig signature layer. This functionality allows the user to dynamically and interactively share the data with the rest of their team. A common scenario is a stakeholder rep is viewing the data and realizes the stable land pad is too close to a farm. With the editor widget, the stakeholder rep can move the pad, add notes to the land department, and remodel the sound signatures. Another interesting note to keep in mind regarding the sound signatures is we can also accurately plan for sound walls using this data. You can see on this mitigated sound signature that the majority of the loud equipment is on the northeast side of the pad. We can once again utilize the editor widget to address this issue. An important feature of the editor widget is that I can also rotate sound signatures. Now that I have rotated the sound signature 180 degrees and effectively moved the noisiest equipment to the far side of the pad, I have a better idea of whether my pads will be in compliance and what, if any, mitigation needs to be present. So to recap, using the search and editor widgets, I can accurately plan for sound walls, strategically place and move pads, and create an interactive team environment using notes and attachments. Having the needs of our stakeholders in mind will also create positive social and corporate responsibility. The challenge of this project was for a single GIS analyst or a small GIS team to compile accurate data, generate the analysis, and provide interactive tools and platforms for their teams to utilize. ArcGIS Pro and ArcGIS Online gave me the tools to easily create the necessary outputs and visuals while having to employ very little custom development. Thank you for joining me today to learn a little more about the regulatory environment in Colorado and how utilizing Esri tools can help to assist multiple teams within a company. If you have a question or comment on this presentation, or want to discuss your next GIS project, please feel free to send me an email. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Going from 100% viable pads to 50% is clearly a challenge, especially with a small GIS team or even a single analyst. It was amazing to see how you're able to create an interactive team environment so that sound walls could be strategically placed and moved. You really kept the stakeholders' needs at the forefront to create positive social and corporate responsibility. It's such great work that you're doing using out-of-the-box tools for maximum value. No matter where you are on your sustainability journey, ArcGIS equips you with the key capabilities to better plan, execute, and record with a scientifically grounded system. Sustainability issues are complex and their impacts are far-reaching. Angie just shared how, with or without regulations to prompt them, business leaders have embraced sustainable processes as part of their corporate social responsibility initiatives. Matt showed us how to ingest real-time and IoT along with imagery to better understand where there are methane emissions and how we can respond. And Vonda from Oxy showed us how ArcGIS can be used as a complete system as companies transform their businesses to meet the needs of our changing world. The petroleum industry has a direct impact on many communities and the people associated with them. By driving and embracing change, we can act as a catalyst to improve our built environment, our natural world, and the lives of people. Sam?
Well, great. Again, Tiffany, thank you for handing it over to me, and really thank you to all of our presenters on the great job that they're doing. It's really exciting to see. I wanted to remind the audience that to continue putting your questions in the chat. I've been looking at some of the questions that are coming in from the great presentations that we are seeing. Definitely a lot of interest, a lot of follow-up questions. And as we continue moving into this second part of the session, please continue to put your questions in. We'd love to have them and discuss them at the end. So what we'll do now is we're going to change gears a bit. We're going to dive into the second part of our session, which focuses more on the health, safety, and environment. I would like to start by reading this quote from Dr. Bonnie Henry. There is only one thing more difficult than planning for an emergency, and that would be to explain why you did not. You know, having a plan in place is crucial, and having had the right tools to do it so is as well. You know, the Esri system is used by many organizations globally to support their entire business continuity workflow, from awareness all the way through recovery. And we need to begin to understand and take action on how different types of risks impact us today, tomorrow, and well into the future. One thing we have learned during this time is that not all the information that you receive is relevant or accurate based on your geography and location. For example, are my risks in San Antonio, Texas, the same as yours in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or maybe Madrid, Spain, or like we say, España? We need to have awareness of the potential risks. We need to find ways to prevent them. We need to have an appropriate plan when incidents do happen, and an effective way to respond to them. All of these help lead to a quick recovery. Our presenters during this part of the session will share with us some of their work in these areas. I'm very excited to introduce first Angie Bordelon from ChampionX. And Angie will talk to us about how they prevent incidents before they happen. Angie has over 23 years of experience in the midstream industry, the majority of which have been dedicated to establishing GIS solutions for safety and regulatory compliance for pipeline operators. She has been responsible for developing essential integrity management processes and procedures, as well as implementing the workflows and applications to facilitate the required completion. Angie has designed numerous custom web-based GIS portals for viewing pipeline data and providing intelligent metrics and deliverables. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you Angie Bordelon from ChampionX. Over to you, Angie.
Thank you, Sam and Tiffany. I am Angie Bordelon with ChampionX. We are a global leader in upstream and midstream chemicals, solutions, and products. We are super excited to share with you today the solution we have developed with the use of many Esri tools to help us in our effort to prevent or at least reduce pipeline incidents that are due to internal corrosion specifically. When I joined the company about 3 years ago, our corporate management team had taken a very focused look at pipeline safety and even created a specific dedicated midstream group to develop some kind of process to help our customers with this challenge. We understood from the get-go, of course, that assessment and mitigation and continuing monitoring was just key to that success. So we based our model along those lines. So generally, this is the incident rates that we were seeing. Just PHMSA reporting 44% of all gathering incidents were due to internal corrosion in the US and 51% in Canada. And that really resonated with us. And we really felt like as a chemical provider to our customers and a trusted partner, we really felt an obligation to help them drive those numbers down in any way we could. The pipeline failures were obviously causing increased risk to public safety, environmental exposure, and even revenue loss or costly fines. So it's hitting our customers in the pocketbook as well. We were able to bring a solution about that incorporated advanced mapping and spatial analytics to identify what's going on inside their pipeline. We had to give them some kind of method to get out in front of these incidents. Historically, that's just been a challenge because internal corrosion is exactly that. It's internal. It's not something you can see or smell or hear, or maybe you could taste it. But so we had to do something to help them get in front of those to prevent them before they happen, right? It was super difficult to understand what where the corrosion was being introduced and what effect it had on the entire system. So these are basically the kind of objectives we had. Of course, like I mentioned, environmental and safety was first and foremost in our minds. We were trying to bring a prescriptive analysis type methodology rather than a reactive type in our pipeline safety purposes. The governance piece goes just basically hand in hand with the safety. I mean, that's just PHMSA rules that are ensuring the pipeline safety for people, environment, and assets. But we wanted to help our operators with the compliance of those rules and show them how they were demonstrated through our tools. The operational advantages down here, as you can see, there's several. Basically, though, we just wanted to help operators thoroughly assess their pipeline and spend the money where it needs to be spent. With our tools, you can see the type of corrosion activity that's happening and where it's happening. So they can put the money where the problem is, not just shotgun effect and treat everything the same. So this is the workflow that we came up with. Basically, as you can see, we use many Esri tools along the way, and I'll go over these with you real quick. The first step, of course, is to meet with the pipeline operators and review our risk algorithms, make sure we understand their priorities and requirements. We modify anything as necessary. If we're not in agreement, we can, our tools are customizable, so we can integrate with theirs. We gather all of their system GIS data, including the operating conditions and any historical data, anything we can gather that will help build out that model. That drives us over to step 2, where we prepare all of that data along with all of the point data where our field reps are going to be collecting the sample data. We push that out to them on their mobile devices through Collector for ArcGIS. That's worked out really, really well because we can log the data in the schema that we need to bring it back to our desktop to run our tools. So it's been really, really valuable. And that's what happens. They log the data and push it back up to our GIS server, and we bring it into desktop and run our model. Our tools will dynamically then segment that pipeline based on the risk levels that were established over in the first step, right? We symbolize it according to risk level, red high, green low, of course, and publish it up to our GIS portal. Then at that point, we're at step 4. At that point, our customers can log in and see this data. We include very detailed charts and histograms, display them in insights for ArcGIS. It's super analytical, and it's been proven to help so many times. They are able to immediately see where the risks are and develop mitigation plans accordingly. The last step is not really the last step, but it will be in this workflow. We develop and recommend the mitigation plans and implement them, and then we start all over to monitor the effectiveness of that plan. So it's kind of a never-ending little circle there, but it's worked out really, really well. So with all of that being said, I would like to show you a little demo. Okay, so quick disclaimer, this is not real data. This is not a real pipeline. This is not real corrosion data. I made it up, so don't try to figure out where it's at. But this is insights for ArcGIS. This is where we show our customers where their corrosion activity is happening, right? As I mentioned before, the levels are symbolized red to green, so you can just very quickly see where your hot spots are. You can pop out the legend over here and see the different values, how that's working. All right. Turn off. Why did that turn? Okay, sorry. Okay, so in the map, you're able to click on any feature within the map, and we would want to find out why that segment right there is so high. So when you select a feature in the map, all the corresponding data below are highlighted. As you can see, these points here now are highlighted. This is a crude system, so we sample for things like paraffin, bacteria, pressure cycles, corrosion rate, things like that. So the goal here basically is to start looking at the weighted risk factor charts. That's what that is. And see where the high spots are, basically. As I'm scrolling down, I don't really see anything that stands out. It looks like the corrosion rate may be high, but as far as a risk factor, it's middle of the road. So we get down to solid deposition, and then you can see it's high as it can get. So is pH water analysis. They're both very high. Those are probably going to be the key drivers in that segment's high ranking, right? Something was introduced in the pipeline at that location that brought those internal corrosion factors in. This is super beneficial. Very recently, we had one of our customers detecting just very high levels of internal corrosion along their pipeline, and we were able to go in and find the producer that was feeding into that line at this point was kind of responsible for introducing those contaminants into the pipeline. They were able to go back to that producer and tell them to clean up their act, and they did. We haven't had that kind of insight into a pipeline before, so kind of appropriate that this is called insights, because that's exactly what it is. We are able to, from looking at this, we can either develop a better chemical treatment program, better pigging program, or just telling operators or producers to clean up their pipelines. Whatever it takes to reduce those incidents is what we're trying to do with this solution here. So that's a pretty quick overview of our solution. If you have any questions, my contact information, it will be on the presentation that will be provided, and feel free to reach out to me. And that's all I have today. Back to you, Sam and Tiffany.
Thanks, Angie. Well, what a great presentation, and the amazing work that you are doing at ChampionX really to prevent incidents from happening. With oil and gas midstream operators facing increased scrutiny from regulators and internal stakeholders to ensure the integrity and the flow efficiency of their pipeline systems. It's really great to see the work ChampionX is doing to help operators, your clients, achieve compliance while protecting and optimizing the flow of the system. Our next presenters are Stefan Young and James Kerr from BP, and they will be talking to us about planning. So Angie just shared with us a great presentation about prevention. Our next presenters will be talking about the planning portion. As part of their digital transformation plan, BP needed to move away from static, paper-based, and in some cases outdated information to a system that would allow them to respond quickly and appropriately in the case of an emergency. So Stefan and James will share their exciting journey on how they leverage the Esri tools to implement a fully digital plan and completely transform their preparedness and emergency response. So just a little bit about our presenters. James is a geospatial digital graduate working with BP's Innovation and Engineering Data Works segment. He has 3 years of experience delivering geospatial support to a wide variety of disciplines, from renewables and environmental studies to oil and gas and major infrastructure. At BP, he's primarily involved in supporting alternative energy projects, as well as traditional upstream and downstream operations within the European and African geographies. Stefan has a master's degree in safety engineering and has been working at the BP refinery in Germany for almost 4 years. There, he works for the Plant Fire Brigade as a fire protection engineer and a real firefighter. In addition to tasks in the area of preventing fire protection, he's responsible for the implementation of GIS in his department, its integration into the new control center, as well as the training of employees. Both James and Stefan are based in Europe, so they were very kind to record their presentation and send it to us. So we'll go ahead and share that with you here in a second.
Hello everybody, my name is Stefan Jung and I'm fire protection engineer and firefighter in the BP refinery Gelsenkirchen. 3 years ago, together with my chief, we gave the go-ahead for geoinformation systems at the Plant Fire Brigade, and I'm still responsible for the development and implementation today. I'm pleased to be part of the Esri Petroleum User Group meeting today and would like to take this opportunity to share with you the journey of our digital transformation. First of all, I would like to briefly give you a few facts about our location and our Plant Fire Brigade. The Gelsenkirchen refinery, founded in 1929, consists of the production sites Scholven and Horst, which are 11 kilometers apart. Gelsenkirchen is located in a large metropolitan region in western Germany. The capacity of the refinery is 240 billion barrels per day. In addition to refining, petrochemicals are also an important pillar of the plant with its almost 2,000 employees. The site fire brigade has about 100 employees. Both sites have their own fire station. The control room is located in Scholven. Here you can see it. At this location, 15 firefighters are always on the site, 4 of which can also support the 9 firefighters in Horst in the event of an emergency. To see the path of our digital transformation, you need to know how we started. Here is an overview about the amount of paper-based data and plans. On the left, emergency plans in our control room, and on the right, pre-fire plans for our plants in our vehicle hall. In this photo, you can see our magnetic board for displaying road closures and broken hydrants. If someone leaned against this info board, everything was in disorder. These practices were outdated and no longer state-of-the-art for a plant fire brigade, which, like the company BP, is in the process of digitalization. Here you can see the new corporate strategy in the course of reinventing BP. An important aspect of this is the area of digital and innovation. OneMap is an example of how we, as part of the company, implement the general goals at the site. This chronological overview shows where we are on the way to digital twin. On the left, the paper-based beginning, and on the right, the future. We currently use a dashboard, web apps, and file maps to display our data. More on this in a moment. At the beginning of 2022, there will be new technology in the control room. One map will be at the key system of this, and interfaces to other systems will be created so that all data can be displayed in one map. For example, when an emergency call is made, the staff's radio will transmit the position to one map. Another example is the display of the filling levels of tanks or the number of employees in plants in case of emergency. All data that already exists in different systems but will be geo-based in one map via interfaces in the future. The possibility of Esri, like indoor navigation, to search for triggered smoke detectors and drone to map for 3D models are also still on our wish list. This mind map shows our projects: green for implemented, yellow for in progress, and red planned. On the one hand, we want to provide real-time information like tracking of mobile radios and fire trucks, the weather, navigation to accident, or number of employees in plant and at meeting point in case of emergency. And on the other hand, static information like main hazards, pipelines, main valves, hydrants, water supply points, tank firefighting information, radioactive emitters, or roadblocks. Another important task is the sharing of information, for example for partner companies, the local crisis management team, or the public fire department. Furthermore, we use one map for the documentation of maintenance work. Here you can see the way it is implemented. A few people create layers and maps based on the raw data, which are then made available to the end user in the control room via web apps or dashboards, or to the emergency response team out in the field via field maps on tablets. The goal is that the end user should have easy access and not need a lot of training. Here are the advantages of OneMap. It's a brilliant tool to support situational awareness. It's every time, everywhere, on tablets, on cell phones, in the field, and on the PC in our control room. OneMap is always up to date, easy to use, and easy to share with others. It helps us saving costs and administrative and data maintenance effort. OneMap is future-oriented, and we have a high availability and high data security. Knowledge transfer is also important. The knowledge of older colleagues is conserved. And at the end, we have a very good support when we have problems with OneMap. Now I would finally like to introduce to the first app called Operations Center. Here we can search for mission relevant information. Here you can see the site Scholven. This app shows us relevant information during an operation. We can get information about buildings and tanks, see the nearest hydrant or other firefighting resources. We get information about hazards, or see if we can best reach the incident site in terms of road closures. All information from the old pre-fire plans are now stored in this app. For example, the extinguishing systems, the extinguishing water supply. Here we can find tank firefighting information. We see the hydrants. We can see main risks. There are more than 30,000 geo-referented information, and it would be too much explaining all layers and all data, all functions. But the app is very helpful for us and our operators in the control room. The road closer dashboard was created in collaboration with the project department and with the support of the BP geospatial team.
The road closures dashboard for Gelsenkirchen is a really nice example of how geospatial technologies can really drive digital change. With OneMap, we were able to implement a solution within just 6 weeks for controlling, logging, and visualizing current and future road closures for the site's fire department, going from phone calls and magnets on paper maps to a nice, simple operations dashboard. The dashboard itself allows the user to submit a road closure request, which is then immediately visible on the dashboard. The fire department can then come in and approve or deny the request, which triggers a status change, and you can see that easily through changing of symbology and the update of various metrics on the dashboard. Not only has this been beneficial for emergency planning and for the general flow of people and vehicles on site, but it's also been beneficial for our project teams who are able to use it for things like construction scheduling, as they're able to have foresight on which areas of this refinery are accessible and inaccessible at a time. And that's something they've never been able to see on a map before. So it's been really beneficial for them. Overall, the project's been a success and the dashboard's been really well adopted by the people at Gelsenkirchen, and the interoperability of Esri software with other software like FME and Excel has really made this project a simple success. The great news is we're not done here. The fire department really now have a taste for geospatial, as they can now see the real value it can bring in their day-to-day operations. So we've got a few more projects in the pipeline as a result of the road closures. So it's very exciting.
The second app helps us to act quickly in the event of incidents on the pipelines outside our site. Here you can get an overview about our pipelines. The green ones are in operation and the red are not in operation. The letter R, for example here, marks the valves. In the north you can see our site called Scholven, and in the south you can see our other site called Horst. The pipelines run right through the urban area and beyond the city limits to other sites, for example here. If there is an emergency call due to a leak or a problem on the pipeline, we are able to use this app to quickly locate the damage and receive information about it. We can find out what products may be leaking at the location, what the pressure and the flow are, or what is in the neighborhood. Furthermore, we can see where the next valves are to shut off the pipeline. We can use route planning to quickly direct our emergency response team to the accident site. Now I will demonstrate an example. If there is a problem reported by a citizen to pillar 450, I can use the search to look for this location and get infos. Here we have the pillar 450 and we see all the pipelines crossing this pillar. Here's, for example, the pipeline 145. We see the medium, we see the pressure or the flow rate and much more other information. We have the possibility to change the background map to get more information about the neighborhood. Now we see schools here, parking and other informations. Here we see the next station with valves to shut off this pipeline, and we have information. Furthermore, we can search for valves and not only for pipelines. we have the possibility to make a routing between our site and the accident. So our emergency response team can find the shortest way to the accident. At the end, I can say we are very happy with OneMap, as we can quickly assess georeference data and have important information for our dangerous operations. This provides more safety and helps to make decisions. Furthermore, we can save money and increase quality, as we only have one system and thus have a lot of time and work in data maintenance. I hope my presentation could help you understanding our plans and goals and demonstrates how we use all the Esri products. Thank you for your attention.
Wow. I mean, what a great story, and what a great journey. Moving from a cabinet full of binders to a digital system that allows them to have an up-to-date comprehensive view of all the assets, status, and response to a potential incident. I want to send a big thank you to Stefan and James for sharing the great beginning of their journey of digital transformation. And I say beginning because, as they stated in their presentation, they continue to develop and enrich this plan. It was amazing to see the transformation that they have started, and even how other departments now are taking advantage of the great work that they're doing. As I mentioned before, Stefan and James are currently in Europe, so they won't be able to join us for the live Q&A. But if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box and we can get the answer for you. Or you can actually reach out to them directly. Their emails are on the screen right now, and I am sure that they will be delighted and glad to hear from the community and answer your questions. Amazing work. One more time, I'd like to remind our audience, as we near the end of the presentations and getting closer to the Q&A, that if you have any questions of any of the presentations that you have seen so far, to go ahead and put those questions in the chat box. And here in a few minutes, we're going to have a live Q&A to address all the questions that you may have and the great feedback that you have already been providing. And we're excited to talk about here in a few minutes. Well, so we have seen from ChampionX the prevention. We just saw from BP the planning, having a proper planning. But unfortunately, incidents can happen. And at these times, a quick response is needed. Resources have to be deployed, and communication among the people in the field, as well as back to the incident command, is crucial. Situational awareness on how things are evolving is critical to ensure a successful response. Finally, the ability to track and store the details of the response for review and further evaluation after the event is vital as well. ArcGIS Mission allows us to manage all these variables during an event, and our colleagues Darren Puston and Scott Nulis will share some of the capabilities of this exciting new tool.
Thanks, Sam and Tiffany. Scott and I are excited to share with you some new technology released this year, ArcGIS Mission. The oil and gas industry takes seriously its commitment to the safety and the security of its workers, its infrastructure and processes. And your crews very often work in complex and dangerous environments, facing many challenges when responding to incidents such as coordinating activities among a dispersed workforce and ensuring that everyone remains in contact regardless of the environment. And needing to provide real-time information to crews. Typically, data is downloaded to their phones, and that's all they have for the incident. So providing crews with the latest information available and being able to have persistent communication is essential when they go out into areas where they're on again, off again network connectivity, and communication and the collaboration becomes really challenging. and something I've seen many times in my career, including in Homa during the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. And a distinct challenge faced even today is not having the ability to document and store all of these activities that can be used for accountability, to make informed decisions, for insurance purposes. This is valuable information in improving efforts. And with so many tasks and teams to coordinate during these time-sensitive incidents, a need for one system that streamlines these workflows, relieving some of the financial as well as the technological challenges of managing multiple systems, and one solution that integrates directly with your ArcGIS Enterprise, unlocking advanced capabilities to support your organization's needs. Mission was specifically created to address these needs in natural resource agencies such as yourselves that handle emergency response, incidents, secure assets and resources, but there are challenges that are common across multiple sectors, such as in public safety agencies where they respond to planned events, and commercial and utility companies that provide security for their facilities, transportation organizations that monitor transportation hubs, and even in health and human service agencies that support coordinated responses due to pandemics and other health crises. ArcGIS is by definition an all-inclusive command and control software product that streamlines operations while providing teams with situational awareness at the tactical levels. Scott will show you shortly how simple it is to define an area of interest on a map, assign resources, and quickly share this information out to the organization. ArcGIS Mission effectively takes command of the situation and tackles these problems by organizing its people, resources, and operational information into a consolidated picture, or that single pane of glass view that facilitates the core planning requirements to get your operation up and running. Whether you're planning an event or need to quickly transition from day-to-day operations to an unplanned incident, your mission analyst, operator, whoever that is at your organization, can essentially create and manage the mission in a simple and easy way by curating the data and content required for the mission, establishing communication with the mobile crews, and setting up an all-inclusive view of operations for executive leadership. Through the software, you can gather and share time-critical information, perform assessments, and create real-time information products required to support operations. And during execution, crews get assigned tasks, keep track of teammates, and report on activities. ArcGIS Mission creates a bridge between incident command and crews, and it utilizes peer-to-peer for persistent communication in the field. In this way, Mission really complements and extends existing communication channels. And to complete the workflow, ArcGIS Mission enables users to conduct temporal analysis to understand patterns even while the mission is active. Let's say going back an hour in time to review activities that took place, and at the completion of a mission to conduct after-action reports. These are useful in training and future mission planning. Now, I'm going to hand it over to Scott to share what the mission experience looks and feels like. Scott?
Thanks, Darren. ArcGIS Mission provides command and control and enhanced situational awareness to teams in various operating environments. Let's take a look at this in the context of a real-world scenario, a spill at an onshore production facility. As a response coordinator, I first want to understand where the incident has occurred and where all of my team members are. Mission Manager is a web app designed to do just this. I can use the map to quickly find the location of the incident by searching through our geocoded asset layers. In this case, a spill has occurred at the Connell 47 West tank battery. The map has been preloaded with reference data coming from our GIS, so I can assess the potential impacts to surrounding wells, infrastructure, and the environment. In the members pane, I can see all the mission participants and the status of each one of them. To better understand where members are in relation to the incident, I can view their locations live on the map. I currently see there are 2 workers here in the vicinity of this spill. Now, clicking on each location will reveal additional information about that worker, like the speed, their direction of travel, and the device battery status. I can also view location tracks to see where workers have been over time. Now that I have a good understanding of the current situation, I need to coordinate the appropriate resources to respond to the spill. The first step is to alert workers that a spill has occurred. The message feature in Mission allows me to communicate important information to Mission members in real time. I can choose to send a chat or specify a location using a geo message. I'll go ahead and send a message to all teams with information about the location of the spill. All communication is logged in the Messages panel over here on the right. In the field, workers receive messages in the Mission Responder mobile app. Communication is bidirectional, so workers can respond to the thread, chat with other mission participants, and inform them of their actions. A map provides workers with enhanced situational awareness using the same authoritative data we saw back in the office. In this case, I can also define the exact location of the spill on a pad with my own geo message. Responders can even view the location of other mission members and chat directly with them, so everyone is aware of what's occurring in real time. All communication and data collected in the field is automatically made available back in the office for the response coordinator to view. The situational awareness that Mission provides enables responders to adjust to dynamic situations as they change. One of the responders here has indicated that the primary containment berm around the tank is almost full. Now, in order to prevent further impact, corrective action needs to be taken. Additional reference layers can add context for enhanced decision making. Here I can see a spill action plan with some isolation zones, setback areas, and downwind zones. I can also view simulated spill flow models that identify likely runoff paths from the pad. Now, in accordance with our response plan, a secondary containment measure needs to be deployed to the site to prevent the spill from exiting the pad. Using the task feature, I can assign work to an individual with information about what needs to be done in order to secure the spill site. Back in the field, responders can view assigned tasks and take action on them. While on site, data about the spill and observed impacts also needs to be collected in accordance with regulatory requirements. Responders can use the report feature to digitally capture information directly in the app. These reports can be configured to match common report templates and even incorporate ICS standards. Additional materials like documents and procedure forms can also be stored in a mission and viewed by responders directly on their device. Mission Manager provides a common operating picture that updates as the situation unfolds. All key mission data is documented in a format that can be filtered for after-action review and playback. At any point during or after the mission, I can see the chain of events as they unfolded and even pinpoint when and where certain events occurred. Critical mission information can be shared with other stakeholders across the organization that need visibility into the mission, but don't necessarily play an active role. The mission dashboard provides a live view into mission activities, metrics, and trends that can be used to make more informed decisions. With the help of ArcGIS Mission, we're able to coordinate an efficient response, contain the oil spill, and prevent serious impacts to the surrounding environment. Back to you, Darren.
Thanks, Scott. And thank you for joining our introductory session on ArcGIS Mission. We have quite a few resources for you to find out more about Mission, including extensive documentation, blogs, and videos. And of course, you can connect with us on the Esri community, on our LinkedIn group, or by email. We're always happy to hear your comments on what works great, what's not so great, and what can be improved.
All right. Thank you, Darren and Scott. You know, it's great to see how experience gained in the discipline of emergency management can be leveraged in the context of oil and gas through standardized practices and new solutions that support improved communication and collaboration in the field. So we're coming to the end of our session, and we want to thank you for joining us for this session to review CSR and HSE practices. The session is not over, but the presentations are. We're going to move here into a live Q&A session. But just to review real quick, we have seen a set of varied presentations covering diverse topics, which range from broad corporate goals to specific regulatory compliance challenges. We also dug into the practicalities of implementing HSE procedures within modern systems, as well as moving from paper to digital processes in an emergency response planning. And finally, we saw with ArcGIS Mission how we can have situational awareness and great communication when an incident happens, both in the field as well as back to the IC. So what we would like to do right now is actually to invite our speakers. We're going to open an interactive Q&A. Over the last few days, after all the sessions, we have had this live Q&A, and it has quickly become the favorite part for our audience, is to really have our presenters come back, have a chat, answer the questions, and then share all the great experiences that you've had. So there's a little housekeeping items for our presenters here. You're all mute. So whenever I call on you or Tiffany, make sure that you unmute, and then hopefully we can have a great dialogue here. So thank you, Andy. Welcome, Angie, Vanda, and our own Matt Ballard. So maybe to start the dialogue a little bit, seems like a common thread or subject that we saw in all of your presentations was this matter of kind of starting a journey, implementing GIS, maybe in a new department or in a new approach. And we'd love to hear a little bit more about that. And Vanda, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you. I think we all seen that a lot of oil and gas companies are looking not only to move into a new department or venture, but really transform themselves completely. And I know Oxy's is kind of leading the charge, today, and you in the GIS department as well. So tell us a little bit, how did this happen? I know you shared a little bit in your presentation, kind of how you get started, but in the company as a whole, how did you elevate GIS and kind of brought that value to the organization?
Well, thank you so much, Sam. Yeah, so at Oxy, I always refer to not just the whole organization, but also to the GIS and the GDM, the data management group, as a really close-knitted community. So we really know each other, not just in headquarters in Houston, but now it's in Denver and in Colorado as well, and then throughout the whole entire field in New Mexico and Texas, and of course, many times in international as well. So because of this small, community, what I'm referring to, it's pretty easy to stick out as a sore thumb when you do something very, interesting and unique like GIS, right? So, and luckily, because we talk about our invention and our maps and our projects and people asking about us, then, okay, how do you do this? How do you do that? I see this one in somebody's else's computer, or somebody showed me this, somebody showed me that. So it goes like in a little village, one person to another, one floor to another, one office to another. And then we are able to, reach out to the farthest locations, in onshore operation and get into people's doors and life and work, and then just tell them, then, yeah, this is what we do. We can help you. Let us know what you are trying to do, and then consider put it on the map. And every single time, we show them what we are capable of, they are just amazed. So it really goes by, mouth to mouth, computer to computer. So that's our luckiness, I think. Then we're really trying to promote GIS inside of the organization by example.
Well, that's great, Vanda. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Angie, let me ask you the same question. You shared with us about what you're doing at ChampionX, and you have implemented new systems. I know you work with multiple clients that might have different cultures, or different things to approach, and you guys are approaching, these companies with this new system. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, it's funny because I just completely understand what Vonda's talking about. I mean, when I came to ChampionX, there was not much of a GIS presence whatsoever. Tiffany knows very well the challenges we have had. But just as Vonda said, I mean, once you start showing people the power of getting inside data, I mean, spreadsheets are wonderful if you like spreadsheets, but they're not if you like to see where things are. So I joined the midstream group, but since then, we have just expanded our GIS footprint into our logistics department too, where we're using it now for route optimization, and we're using it for sales and marketing, exploring those avenues as well. So just one little crumb of GIS just sparks so much stuff, and it's been so exciting these last 3 years, honestly, to kind of open up people's eyes to what GIS does. So it's fun. It's a lot of fun. I'm a little overworked, but it's fun.
Well, thank you, Angie, for sharing that. Andy, I'm going to move to you and kind of ask you the same question. Now, I know you for a few years, and I know you work kind of in the corporate environment, and now you've been working with Plant Analytics as a consultant. But in your presentation, you kind of mentioned about new regulatory changes, new laws. A lot of times working with companies that are navigating a completely new set of rules, and you have to go in there, right, and show the value of GIS. Can tell us a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks, Sam. Working here in Colorado, they got what I would say, ever evolving regulatory environment. Seems like every year, every 6 months, 3 months, everything's changing. Rework, do this over. Brand new regulations every year, that type of thing. So, ArcGIS Pro, online web app builder, those types of things, and it really helps companies and clients stay ahead of the regulatory environment in Colorado. The biggest thing is making sure that operations can continue. The worst thing that could happen is a new regulation comes down and a company has to stop drilling or has to stop their completions for a few months to try to figure it all out. So that's the biggest key for me is using the suite of Esri tools to kind of stay ahead of the regulations and stay ahead of all the rulemaking here in Colorado.
Thanks, Andy. It's actually it's interesting to see all of your journey and how so many things are aligned with how you're reaching out to different departments, and then how that just kind of perforates throughout the organization. So it's great to see that. But we have a ton of questions, and they're still coming in. So we have time. So please send in your questions. But I have a question for you, Vonda. And the first question for you that came up says, how do you deliver the results of your various analysis you share to your end users?
Well, first of all, the end users are a very small group of people because LCV is still, it's just a couple, handful of folks. So we have a live session with them when we are sitting in a meeting, of course, not online because of our situation. But we also educating them when we do the analytics. Then, okay, this was your input data. This is what you were looking for. And this is how we reach this one. So we actually kind of training them about GIS and all the analytics behind the scene. So we are dragging them down into the spatial statistics, which is sometimes super confusing to them to really understand them. We just didn't pull out those numbers from our pocket. We really, made sure that the input information, what they were giving us, or the data, what we find somewhere, that's another part, right? To weed out the data. And then we applied all those analytics on it. Then the results, it's really backed up by science. So by showing them that, they believe us. I mean, that's what I can say.
I love that approach, actually educating the users and having them involved in the process. Yes. I'm sure that probably requires them or has them coming back to you for more and more different things because they really understand what you're doing,
That's correct.
There's another question.
Go ahead.
Oops.
Nope,
Oh,
you got
go
it.
ahead. All right. I'm getting excited. All right. Angie, I have a question for you. During your presentation, you demonstrated Champion X's pipeline risk IQ solution. There was a question on how does this fit into the integrity management plan?
So that's a good question. We get that quite a bit. So integrity management is actually 9 different components, right? And internal corrosion is just one of those 9. So it's not meant to be like a replacement for an internal or integrity management program, but it's just feeds into it. So we've developed, through working with our customers, we can load the results of our analysis to either pods or whatever system they have that then feeds their integrity management program. So that's the good thing that we're with GIS, of course, that we're not tied to any certain structure or anything. We can modify our results and deliverables to fit into whatever plan they're using and whatever format they need. So it's very helpful. Because there's just a ton of different software packages or just methodologies for integrity management. So having that kind of flexibility to assist our customers in whatever way they can, it's been really good. Okay, so hope that answers that.
Yes, thanks, Angie.
So we have a few more questions here. Actually, we have a question for Matt. Matt, in your presentation, you mentioned a few items: remote sensing, field inspections, sensors. And the question that's coming in is, which one is better? The trade-offs in kind of these 3 categories. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so between sensors or IoT devices, inspections that are performed by people in the field, and remote sensing, there's definitely trade-offs between each of them, and they can all be applied to emissions monitoring. One trade-off is how frequently can each of these items inspect. Sensors, right? They're constantly monitoring, whereas remote sensing might be able to capture weekly data, like we saw with that GHGSat example. Whereas inspections, you're relying on people to go out and actually visit facilities. So how frequently something can be inspected with, also the area that it could cover, right? Remote sensing can cover the whole globe, whereas a sensor typically is going to be tied to a facility or a specific asset or a piece of equipment, right? So how big of an area, also how much of an area, or how small of an issue, I should say, can be picked up, right? From satellites, you're not going to observe a leak from, a plugged and abandoned well, for example, but you will pick up really big leaks, enabling you to maybe cover most of your significant emissions. And then the last one is cost, right? So each of these has a different cost. And so there's all these different trade-offs. Those 4 sort of the key ones that come to mind. And when picking which one to use or which combination of technologies to use, the right one, it really depends on the scenario.
Thanks, Matt. Andy, question for you. So you showed, question says, you showed a new way of collaborating and working together as a team in projects. Did you have any challenges rolling this out or changing how people work?
Yeah, that's a good question. And yeah, I go back to, I spent 6 years or so at Anadarko, and we at first, when I first got there, we didn't have much for collaborative environments within GIS. And then we started using some ArcGIS Online layers, like hosted feature layers, web app builder, things like that, to make notes, add attachments, edit parcels, edit polygons. And it really helped because it can allow, like I said in my presentation, it can allow dozens of different colleagues, different teammates, even people in different offices, see dynamic changes, interact directly with the data. So, it's a really benefit that, someone sitting in Houston can update it, someone sitting in Denver can see the update almost simultaneously. Like I said, you can share notes, you can share attachments, pictures, you can edit a lot of that data in the field. So it really helped kind of bring a lot of teams together, working with the same data. I think I mentioned in my presentation, a regulatory analyst can make a note that a geologist could see, a geologist can make add an attachment that an engineer could see. And it really kind of helps bring a lot of teams together under the same GIS umbrella.
That's awesome. Vanda, actually, another question for you. So, well, with these new changes, a lot of interest there. Actually, the question is, what is the most challenging part of helping low carbon ventures with their projects?
Well, I would say finding the right data, because there is so many information out there. I mean, this really took off like a couple of years ago, and then so many open data sources, so many companies, so many, government, entities and companies are releasing data, and then weed that out and really understand then if it's true or not, or it's usable for us, or really has that depth of information what we are looking for to gain that data set and that information what we are at Low Carbon Venture are needed the most. So that's the most challenging. It's really, just we need to learn the data, what we put our hands on, and then make sure then we choose the right one. So that's I think that would be the most challenging part.
All right,
thank you.
Thanks, Vanda. Angie, this next question is for you. Angie.
So exciting.
So, Angie, in your case, you showed us some insight workbooks. How did your end user adopt this new way of looking at data and analytics, and how well was it received?
Right. Well, that is a very good question, because insights is very analytical. I mean, and if the right person isn't looking at that data, it's just kind of going over their head. So you kind of have to just break it down for them it very quickly, like I did, just show them the data and then the map that supports it. Here's the hot spots and here's why. And don't if they don't know GIS, they're not going to figure it out very quickly. So that's you have to have the right audience for sure to understand that data. So we do deliver it in other formats too, for those kinds of people that aren't just as savvy, tech savvy. So we print maps as well, and incorporate it into our recommendations and things like that. But for those guys, the upper management people, those are the ones that want to see where are we spending money, and is the money we're spending working? Because we also do like a time slider analysis as well. So, you go 6 months from now and go retest and see, okay, is that place still red? And if it is, what the heck are we doing, right? So those are the kind of guys that really need to see that kind of detail, and they love it, that part. But yeah, it's not for everybody. So I don't know if that's a good answer or not, but that is the correct one.
No, but I mean, I obviously people want to know, and I think you're exactly right? It's, you have to make things to fit the audience. And I think everybody here probably has to modify different things that they do depending on the audience, right? So
right. Yep. So, but it all these comes back to just that visual display of the risk, and that's just key, right? So even if they're not clicking on charts or whatever, even if it's just a visual of the high risk areas, that's just so beneficial. So it's been very well received.
Thanks, Angie.
That's great. So I guess just kind of keeping in the topic of data, we're in GIS, right? Everybody wants to know about data. So Andy, actually, this question is for you. In your presentation, obviously, you were talking about different data sets and how to manage them. So this is actually probably a question that is particular to Colorado. They say, is it possible to also utilize COGCC data in this analysis?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Yeah, absolutely. I last few years have spent some time on various state sites as far as oil and gas goes: Colorado, Wyoming, North Dakota, Montana, Texas, and actually Colorado has one of the better state sites for oil and gas data. They actually make it pretty easy to download the data, surface hole location, bottom hole location, permits, and things like that. They they have a lot of tables and a lot of geodatabases and shapefiles on their site, and they actually make it pretty easy to scrape all their data too, which is nice. So it's easy to come by the data. It's easy to bring into a project ArcGIS Online, which is nice. So data like surface hole locations, bottom hole locations, paths, are all very useful, pieces of information when determining site feasibility or regulatory compliance. So absolutely, I anytime I looking at the regulatory environment of Colorado, I almost always have COGCC wells, surface holes, paths, whatever brought in. At least if you need to take a look at it, you can. But it was definitely good information to have at your disposal in a project for sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy. Tiffany, you want to take the next one?
Yeah, and since we're talking about data, Wanda, there's another question for you, specifically around data. And the question is, how do you manipulate the data to your specific needs?
Oh, heavy question. Well, it really depends what is the outcome, what you are looking for, right? But there are basic, functions what we are trying to use. Just first to understand the data set, then to see, then if we go down certain route is what that's going to yield us, or if we turn to the other direction, what kind of information we can gain. What if we combining, data sets, and then getting into a totally new, information what we never seen before. So it really depends on what's the need, but we are trying to approach every single data and every single data combination in a way that is not just going to answer that specific question what the low carbon venture team is looking for, but possibly find even more than that.
Thanks, Wanda.
So there's a question here related to mission. Darren and Scott cannot be on the call today, but Matt is here. And Matt, maybe I can throw that question over to you. So the question is, can mission work with the current ArcGIS environment that I have in place?
Yeah, so ArcGIS Mission is an additional server capability on top of ArcGIS Enterprise. So it would rely on either standing up a new ArcGIS Enterprise environment or tacking it on top of your own ArcGIS Enterprise environment. And that enables you to use all those other applications too in conjunction with it. Like you saw in Scott's presentation, he used dashboards, but also field applications fit into the sort of whole workflow. So yeah, it is something that can be added on to ArcGIS Enterprise.
Thank you, Matt. So I think we have maybe time for one, maybe two more. Angie, actually, this question is for you. The question is, what kind of feedback have you gotten actually from regulatory agencies once you implemented this system?
Well, that is a valid question, because that is what we're trying to help them accomplish, right? Is regulatory compliance. David Wint is our internal corrosion guru. He's been doing it for 40 years. He's just amazing. And he's friends with a lot of regulatory types. He actually teaches at PHMSA classes. Oh, sorry, I'm kidding. 1 second, please. I didn't know there was going to be so many questions. Just kidding. So he actually teaches at PHMSA. So we kind of picked some of those cohorts to have a look at it and run it by them and see what they thought. They gave it all the thumbs up. So it has been kind of vetted by different state regulatory agencies, but so that was kind of how we decided to move any modifications we made late in the day was based on their feedback and stuff. So it's been they came through for us and said it was good. So I was happy. Thank goodness, right? I was happy about that.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you, Angie. Well, Tiffany, I think we may have time for one more. How about maybe you take it and then I'll close us out?
Yeah, so the last question is for Andy. Andy, the question is, could you see the data and the results of your analysis to be useful in field apps as the field crews confirm pad changes?
Yeah, absolutely. I obviously demoed making edits to a hosted feature layer on my desktop, but it can very easily be edited out in the field. You could very easily be using Survey 123 or another one of the field apps along with the data. So yeah, absolutely. You can have that data in the field, add notes, add attachments, take a pictures, things like that. So yeah, it would be pretty easy to do all that work outside of the office for sure.
All right. We only have a couple of minutes left, so I want to take this time, first of all, to thank all of our presenters coming to this live Q&A session and share more of your knowledge and your experience with all of the community. I also would like to thank our extended community that has been attending all of the sessions throughout the last 3 days. Obviously, this has been different times, and we have been able to stay virtual, right, in order to stay safe. We really can't wait for the day that we can again be together and give each other high fives and sit down, have a cup of coffee, and have a lot of these conversations in person. But the outpour of collaboration that has come from the community throughout all of these events, it's invaluable. We're really hard at Esri to putting the tools together, but we recognize that the real value comes from the great GIS community and the willingness to collaborate with each other. So really, we're honored of working with you every day. We thank you for all your work that you're doing, and we wish you the best in the coming weeks and months, and we'll continue to press forward. Keep doing what you're doing. It is awesome to be part of this community, and we thank you once again. With that, again, thank you everybody for attending. If you have any further questions that we couldn't get to, make sure that you reach out either to a colleague or somebody at Esri, and together we'll find a way just to continue pushing forward and continue to be successful. Have a great afternoon. Thank you everybody for attending.